your name in the chat for me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marcia, for that reminder. So today we're just going to go over a few things for closing out your PEARS for 2020. And then I just have some general reminders from PEARS as well. I've received a few questions from ambassadors that I've incorporated into the training, but there'll be plenty of time at the end for specific questions you may have. But then, as always, if you have questions as you're implementing what you learned today, just let me know and I'd be happy to meet with you. One second. Okay, so what we'll do today is we'll just do reminders of the dates we have coming up. We'll talk about the COVID-19 impact field. Everything is really reminders today, but there are things that I'm seeing in PEARS that are common errors that I thought it would just be good to remind everybody about them. We'll go over online classes, those that have survey responses and those that don't, and how to go about filling those out. We won't go over the details. I'll refer you back to the trainings that we've done that are recorded that you can review. Some PSE things that I'm seeing, common mistakes, and then some general PEARS updates that you'll see coming out. Actually, tomorrow night they'll be coming out. So some of your entries may look a little bit different, but it's nothing to be concerned about. So the important dates are Wednesday, September 23rd. So that's 2 weeks from today, I believe. I'd like you to have everything that was finished prior to September 23rd completed in PEARS and marked as complete. So anything that, so we're gonna have to manage muting people too.
Yeah. I always feel warm and then I'm like, God, it really is cold out there. We went to get our trailer last night. It was snowing.
Hey, Cindy, can you mute yourself, please?
There we go. Okay, thanks, Marcia. Okay. So anything that was completed prior to September 23rd, please have those completed. So any program activities, any success stories, PSE work, anything like that. So that's when the bulk of your things should be done in PEARS. And when you pull up your PEARS entries, you should see in that column the little green check to everything. And that's how you know you have marked it complete and you've finished that entry. For things that are going on beyond September 23rd, so like your social media entries or PSE work or maybe some virtual classes you have doing, I'll give you until October 7th to complete those, just because obviously you can't complete something if it's still ongoing through the end of the fiscal year. So just as a reminder, September 30th is the last day of our fiscal year. So anything that occurs until that point should be counted in this year in PEARS, and then October 1st we'll start a new reporting year. So the last I looked, which was the end of last week, about 24% of program activities are not completed. That's a bunch of them are the online classes we've been doing where people, I'm guessing, have left them open to keep the survey links live. So if people watch those videos now that they're just available on Facebook, that people could still complete the survey. But there were also a lot that were just really old program activities. So things that probably happened before COVID that may have fallen off your radar. So please go through your program activities and make sure everything is cleaned up in there and completed. And then of PSE entries, about 80% were not completed, which is not surprising because a lot of people are doing PSE work and probably will continue to do PSE work over the next couple of weeks, since that's one of the program areas that is currently open for face-to-face programming. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention that those will need to be done by September 23rd or October 7th, whatever date corresponds to when you'll complete those activities. So I've said this quite a few times. We have the COVID-19 impact field and it's in all program areas, and it's really essential that that is completed for for any entries that were impacted by COVID. So you'll have like program activities that you started last October and ended by January, so they didn't have any impact, and there's not a no impact option. So those you can leave that field blank. But for anything that either crossed through March 16th or started after March 16th should have an option selected in the COVID impact field. When we're reporting out this year to FNS, they want to know what programs and what people were reached due to COVID-19, so we can really see nationally the response that SNAP-Ed made to the pandemic. And one of the great things about using PEARS is they can filter this information out for us, but only if it's filled out properly. So it's really essential that you, not only complete that field, but also do it according to the instructions that were sent out a few months ago. But just as a reminder, these are the options, and these are some of the examples of when you would use the different options. So you have new due to COVID-19. So obviously that's something that you weren't doing before COVID-19. And all of these activities and the reach associated with them will be reported to FNS separately than the other programs that were not new because of the pandemic. So these you would select for virtual classes that you did after March 16th. You would not do new due to COVID-19. For example, if you started face-to-face classes prior to the pandemic and then finish them online, you would not select new due to COVID-19 for that example. That would be modified. So these are just things that happened March 16th or after, and weren't happening prior to that date. This could be also for PSE and partnerships. I know we've been putting in a lot of the Farmers Feeding Utah entries, and those are all new due to COVID-19, or if you started working with a new community garden or a new food pantry, then you would select this option here. The other one is modified due to COVID-19. So again, the example I just gave was like classes that you started prior to COVID face-to-face and then you went to online, you would select modified. Or maybe you were doing thumbs up work at a pantry, but then you kind of switched gears and started doing community garden work to bring produce to that pantry. So your work changed because of our inability to go face-to-face. So that would also be a modified due to COVID-19 option. An interesting thing PEARS will be doing is they're going to be looking at the dates associated with these entries, so that if it's something that started prior to March, then it wouldn't be included in the COVID-19 count for FNS. It will be included in the previously planned programming. So that one will be kind of divided out, but still really important that you properly select that impact in PEARS. And then postponed due to COVID-19 and canceled due to COVID-19 are kind of self-explanatory. So just select those for anything that was impacted. So again, make sure everything that at least spanned through March and forward has one of these selected in PEARS. Okay, the next area are online classes. So like I mentioned earlier, I know a lot of people were waiting to see if people would complete those surveys, so they needed to keep them open and not completed. But you do want to get in there and start closing those as soon as possible. You can keep the videos up on Facebook, that would be fine, or whatever platform you have them up. But the survey link will close once you complete that program activity, and that's okay. In our perspective. So start getting those closed out. There's quite a few of you that have quite a few online classes that do have survey entries, and we did a training on July 20th on how to go through that process to get that information and use the surveys to fill out. I'll be right back, sorry. Okay. It'll take quite a bit of time to get the information from the surveys to fill out the reach and demographics of those PEARS entries. So you really want to get in there and get started on those. On the next slide, I think I have a link to the training you would need to do that. So you can go back and review the steps for that process. Some people I've noticed have done the online classes and they didn't have survey responses, or maybe they had like one survey response, but then I've noticed they've recorded 12 people viewed their video or their class, attended their class in the reach. So if you're using some alternative way to determine like that 12 people attended that class, please reach out to me and let me know how you are estimating that. Based on the numbers that I'm seeing, you're not necessarily, I can tell you're not necessarily using the view information from Facebook, which is not an accurate depiction of how many people are reached by our education. You must be using some other estimation, or if you know the people that are attending, or so I don't want to totally disregard it and say, unless you have survey entries, you can't count any reach. But I need to know how you're doing that so that A, we report it right if it's okay, and B, to determine if it's accurate enough to actually record that as the number of people reached. So reach out to me. I know of a handful of people that I've seen this with, so I'll probably be reaching out to you as well by the end of the week if you don't reach out to me today. So again, just let me know how you've been estimating your reach from those online classes if it hasn't been through those who completed the survey. Another thing that I've seen is a couple of program activities. In the comments, it says in the reach, people have reported one person, but in the comments, it says no one attended this class, so I just counted myself as the reach. And I'm sure that was because you can't report a reach of 0 and actually save that program activity. But if you had no one attend the classes, you will need to move it over to an indirect activity if it was on Facebook. But if it was, the example I'm thinking of is like a closed Zoom class that a county did that no one attended. In that case, you just go ahead and delete that program activity. That's why we were keeping them on the Google Calendar. That's kind of where we're looking to see the program activities that were planned and didn't happen, but they don't need to be reported in pairs. So again, if you did like a closed group and no one came, you don't need to keep that as a program activity. All right, this is another slight change to the program activities that I'm going to ask people to go ahead and do in your own activities. I'll go through and make sure it's done in all of them because it is a request from FNS. This is in program activities in the SNAP-Ed custom data section, and they're asking for us for our online classes to select a specific setting that those classes took place. What we're looking for is where your participants would have most likely viewed your classes from. So if you think if it was like on Facebook and people were probably viewing from their homes, in the setting you would select live, and then at the bottom of the live options there would be, the last one is other, individual homes or public housing sites. And when you select that, a new box pops up that says, you know, setting other, and you're supposed to type in what you want that setting to say. And we're asking that you put COVID-19 home, and this should be in all capitals. And then in addition to that, if you did like Zoom classes into an organization, like a partnering organization, I know Utah County did quite a bit of this. You would select work as the location that they viewed from. Even if it was more of like a community setting, it would still be captured as, you know, a place they went to work, and then select other places people go to work, and then COVID-19 work. And again, this should be in all caps. And I'm going to just stop share here and open up my pairs so that I can show you exactly where you would be entering that. And this training is recorded, so we'll send it out for everyone to review. Okay, so here's pairs. This would be in specifically in program activities. Just going to open one of my tests. Okay, so it would be over here in the second row, SNAP-Ed custom data. And then setting, you would go down to the live setting. And the very last one is, or I guess it's not the last one, the second to last is other neighborhood settings where people live or live nearby. And then once you hit that other, this box will pop up, the setting other, and you're required to type something in there. So you would type COVID-19 home and then save. So it's something I'll ask you all to do, but I'll be going in. If you see that I've edited your entries and it's already there, that's because I went in and just made that change for you, just because that's a requirement for our end of year reporting. Now I've lost. All right. All right, so that's kind of general online classes. So again, we've differentiated between online classes that have survey responses and those that don't, and the way we're going to report those. We recognize it's kind of a clunky system. We're looking at ways to streamline it for next year, knowing that we will still have some of these online, or a lot of these online classes happening, some of which will end up with no survey responses. But for those that you did have a survey response, you need to get your reach and demographic information from the surveys that were completed by your participants. So here's a link to the training that I did back on July 20th on the YouTube training channel. You'll see it's just the July 20th statewide training. And this part of the training is the first part of that meeting. So you can watch it. It's about 15 minutes long. And it just goes step by step how you would go into PEARS, see which classes had survey responses, then go into find those survey responses, export them into an Excel spreadsheet, and then use those to complete the demographic sections of those program activities, which is required for you to do before you can mark them as complete. I will, if you are having trouble exporting your spreadsheet, I can do that for you. You just need to reach out to me. I really offer this to the ambassadors in the counties where there's multiple ambassadors, just because you're going to, if you export your spreadsheet, like I say in the training, you're going to end up with a spreadsheet that not only has your program activities listed, but those of ambassadors who you have editing capabilities and PEARS for. So Utah County, Salt Lake County, those can get a little bit clunky because like Norma, if you pull your Create Better Health one-time surveys, you're probably going to see yours and Gabby's and Nancy's. So it gets a little bit tricky to get it organized to where you need it. So I'm not going to just go ahead and do this for everybody, but if you would like me to pull your spreadsheet and send it to you so it's easy for you to get the numbers, just let me know and I'd be happy to do that. Where I'd like these closed up in 2 weeks, just send me that information as soon as you can. Okay, so the other side of the coin are those Facebook classes where you posted a survey, but no one completed the survey. And as we've said all along, what the process you're going to have to go through that is we're going to have to delete that program activity and actually move it to an indirect activity. Just because Facebook does not provide any useful insights for us to determine how many people actually watched a large portion of our video to be able to capture them as actually reached with our education, because there are just more strict guidelines on what we can count as education. So Jocelyn, we sent out instructions on how to do this, but you'll create a single indirect activity for all of your Facebook classes and then capture each of those classes within that entry. So those instructions also are out, and I'll probably put a package together with this video and all of the different instructions you may need so you have everything in one place. So those Facebook classes, the actual classes, won't be captured as part of your monthly Facebook reporting. So you would have like your, say, Box Elder County Facebook page, regular indirect reporting, and then you would have your Box Elder County Facebook classes as another indirect activity entry so that we could capture those separately and report those separately. Anything you've done that are not full classes, so videos, quick tips, if you just did a recipe or one of those tasty style videos and posted that on Facebook, all of that will be captured in your regular monthly Facebook report. So you don't have to do a different entry for those. It's just the full classes that didn't receive any survey responses that will be captured as a separate indirect activity. Are there any questions about that specifically? Okay. Okay, some more just kind of general program activity errors that I've seen that we still have time to clean up is when you're doing your program activities, unique individuals should only be counted once in your reach. So you don't count them multiple times. Sometimes I see things like, here's an example. If you had a class and the first class you had 3 kids come, and then the second class, you had 4 kids come, but 3 of those kids were the same kids. You would just enter, you know, your total reach as 4 because there were 4 unique or different kids that came total. Sometimes what I'll see is class 1 had 3 kids, class 2 had 4 kids. So even though a bunch of those kids were the same, the ambassador will count that as a total reach of 7, which, you know, is just over-reporting the actual reach. So you only add new individuals during each class. So I'm going to end this again and just go back to PEARS to show you where I'm seeing this. And this is just why it's really important to add a series of classes as a single entry with different kids, you know, with each of the lessons listed separately rather than individual program activities. Because if you do each class as its own program activity, then the way PEARS is set up is it's going to pull all of those kids as different kids. So it would again over-report the kids that you've been seeing, even though you've been, you know, seeing the same kid multiple times. If that makes sense. Let's see. All right. So I'm going to go back to, I'll just stay in this series. In here, no. SnapEd custom data. Okay, it's in the general information, so the first row here. And most people are doing this right, but there's enough entries that I think are done wrong that I just wanted to add it today. So here is my first class was taught on March 20th at 9. I had 2 participants. I'm going to add the next one. Okay, and I had, you know, say 3 participants here. Here you can count all of the people that you had. This is just the total number of participants. And then when you go into demographics, so my total number, I had the same people in both classes. So I just had 3. And some people here would have taken these same kids. Sorry. Would have taken these 3 kids and counted it as 6. So we know that's not the case. So we want to just be really accurate in our reporting to make sure we're not over-reporting our reach. And if you have questions about that specifically, just let me know and I'd be happy to walk through that with you. And then just another reminder, this is really more so for moving into the new year. Just be sure to use the proper set of surveys. I see all sorts of interesting combinations of surveys, or one that I see quite a bit is, you know, you'll have a series of 6 classes, and for each of the 6 classes, just the mid-series survey where it was attached. There were no pre or post done, which is, I'm not quite sure what happens there. So just a reference point, if you're confused about which surveys to distribute at what point, you can always look in the protocol manual. We'll send an updated one out with your conference information. The entire section 8 is all on evaluation, and it has in a narrative how to do it, but then it also has images of the surveys and when you distribute each of them. So just make sure you're using the right combination. I definitely recognize that, you know, maybe you do pre and mid and then you distribute the post, but no one completes it. I understand that circumstance. but the other odd combinations, I'm not sure what's happening there. So if you have questions, rather than just guessing, just reach out to me and I can answer your question in probably about 2 minutes on which one to use. It's also fine to keep, several copies of each of the surveys on hand, so that you're ready to go. And then, if you realize 5 minutes before your class, you're not sure which one to do, just shoot a quick email or call the office and we can get you set. But if you have them all in your kit, you'll know which one to distribute. Also for online classes, please use the online surveys. They have the same questions, but there are some required disclaimers and information on those surveys that we generally share in our classes when we're talking to participants that we don't necessarily do with our online classes. So please be sure when you're sharing those links out, they link to these online surveys. They just have some important additional information for participants, primarily letting them know that their answers remain anonymous and the questions are voluntary. So just some basic human research stuff that is important to share with them. I think for 2021, I'm going to make this even more clear, and in PEARS, I'm going to have face-to-face Create Better Health one-time survey, so including face-to-face in the title there, and then also including online Create Better Health one-time survey or whatever survey it is. So just please pay attention to that. PSE entries overall look pretty good. The one thing that I see is changes adopted. Just be sure that the changes adopted reflect work that happened while you were working with that setting, not things that were necessarily in place before you started working with them. An example might be if you're working at a store and they already had, all of the food groups represented at the store, you wouldn't choose that as a change that was adopted due to your PSE effort. That was something the store was already doing. And if no changes have been made yet, you can just reflect that in the stage of implementation. So I think there's 5 or 6 stages of implementation. So you can see here, the first 3 are just when you've initiated conversation and you've started to plan things. So if no changes have been made, your stage of implementation would suggest that if you just selected, stage 1 and stage 2 have been completed. Stage 3 started implementation of stages. You would only select once changes would be made. So once you have this implementation stage selected, that's when you are required to select changes adopted. But again, if you haven't gotten to that point where changes have been made, you would just select stage 1 and stage 2. And that would let us know that you didn't just forget to put changes adopted in, but they just haven't happened yet because PSE work takes a long time to get going. So that's the biggest one with PSE entries that I see. Partnerships and coalitions, just watch for duplicates. We see quite a few duplicates, and I think a lot of it happens when you copy something over from the previous year. The copy stays in, but then also a new entry has been made. So just watch for that and go through those over the next couple of weeks and just make sure those are all cleaned up. And then you do have to mark those as complete. Marking those as complete doesn't indicate that your work with that partner is done and over. It just indicates that that entry is complete. So if you don't think you're going to have to add any more to that entry, you can mark it as complete anytime during the year. And the nice thing in PEARS is even once you mark things as complete, you can always mark them as incomplete to go back and edit them. It's never just like a closed case. Rather, what it allows for is when I'm looking in PEARS, if I need to report out mid-year, quarters, things like that, I can pull things that are just completed, or I can pull things that are also incomplete. So it just allows me to kind of see where you are in that specific entry. And then one of the ambassador questions is in success stories, why it just has, you can tie it to a program activity. You can select one of your program activities to tie it to, but you can't select any of your other types of entries. And I honestly don't know why it's set up that way in PEARS, but you can, and we encourage you to write success stories about PSE work, about partnerships, about indirect activities, about your Facebook work, anything. And you'll notice that program activity connection is optional. So you don't have to select a program activity to tie it to. That is totally optional. But it would be nice, and it's something I may mention to PEARS if they're not already thinking of it, to also be able to tie it to a PSE entry or some of the other program areas. This is the PEARS update. So as of tomorrow night, they're adding collaborators to each module, which is in program activities. It's going to take the place of delivery people, where you would add other ambassadors that helped you with that program activity. But now this will be in not only program activities, but in PSE, which I know is something that a lot of people have asked about. Where can we put when we work together on PSE activities? Because that's something we definitely expect larger groups of people to be working on. So it will have, I think it'll be right under general information, and then it would be collaborators, and then SNAP-Ed custom data, evaluation, demographics. So for your program activities where you already have delivery people entered, that's going to automatically transfer. So you won't have to add those folks in. But for like PSE entries and everything, you'll be able to click on collaborators, and it's an optional field. So if no one else helped you on it, you don't have to put them in it. But if they did, you'll click on it and you'll add the person, and then you can choose what capabilities they have for the entry. So you can add view only, so they'll just be able to view your entry, but they wouldn't be able to edit it. Or you'll be able to select view and edit. And that will only give that ambassador access to that entry, not your whole account. So that's something that is just important to note. And then if you do view and edit, then they'll obviously be able to contribute and add to that entry. And then this will be coming out. PEARS will shut down for an hour or so tomorrow night, I think after normal business hours. And so when you log back in on Friday, you'll see this hopefully in all the program activities if everything goes, or all the program areas if everything goes as planned. So that should be a good addition. All right, so that's all of the things that I wanted to cover. I just threw those dates up here, so I'll just leave this screen up, and now I just open it up to your questions or comments or whatever you have. And just a couple other reminders. If you're hoping to get back face-to-face youth classes, get those templates completed. We've seen a couple, and we'll get those pushed through to get you back into the schools in some of our counties that have been invited back. And another, I think we're going to be doing, I'm waiting to have this confirmed, but the Community Partner Recognition Awards this year. I'm not sure exactly what it's going to look like, but we do still want to recognize our partners. So we'll be sending out that survey that we send out every year for you to nominate your community partners. All right. Okay, I don't see any questions. If you have questions, let me know. If you want me to pull your spreadsheet, let me know, and we'll send out all of those information sheets on how to do the Facebook classes with and without surveys again, so you have those at your fingertips as a resource. All right, thanks everybody.